A new proposed bill in Missouri seeks to make it illegal to aid or abet women in Missouri from seeking an abortion out of state. The bill was introduced by State Representative Mary Elizabeth Coleman, who says she is trying to protect Missourians at all costs from the dangers of abortion. The bill, if passed, would allow for civil enforcement. That is, residents of Missouri could file suit against anyone helping a woman obtain an out-of-state abortion that has been deemed illegal within state limits. The proposed bill would also ban pro-abortion organizations from financing a woman's abortion. And joining us now is State Representative Mary Elizabeth Coleman. Mary Elizabeth, thank you for joining us. Could you share with us some more specifics about this bill? What does it mean exactly to aid and abet an abortion procedure, and what would someone need to do in order to fall into this category of people?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So Missouri is in many ways living in a post-Roe world. We're all very hopeful that the Dobbs decision is going to come down in the right way. But in Missouri, we had 153 abortions that took place in the state last year. Now, that's 153 too many, but what's happened is there's a mega clinic right on the border in Illinois where there's advertising and call centers that are taking place, and over 10,000 Missouri women have obtained an abortion at that clinic since it's opened in 2019. So this really is a national fight that we need to make sure that we're focusing on, and every state is doing everything it can to protect the women of their state. So right now what happens in Missouri is if you call the last Planned Parenthood that's open in the state and you try to book an appointment, they actually book you an appointment in Illinois, and then they send a driver to pick you up and drive you to that clinic if you don't have transportation. In some instances, they'll pay for your hotel. So this law is aimed at, like other, other criminal activity, trying to limit what can be done to further that criminal activity. So if it's somebody obtaining an abortion in the state or out of the state, the state still has a real strong interest in protecting the lives of the unborn here in Missouri. So there's a lot of jurisdictional issues, a lot of freedoms under the First Amendment of speech, as well as of assembly and movement. And so this would in no way affect those. I think some of the mainstream media has classified this incorrectly, but it's really aimed at when you drive down I-70, which is the main corridor that connects Kansas City to St. Louis, you see billboards that say, come to Illinois where abortion is readily available. Under my law, those billboards would be illegal. States have broad authority to enforce, commercial speech, as well as limiting anybody who's trying to evade the laws of the state. So that's really what this is aimed at doing, is trying to use those Texas-style enforcement mechanisms to protect the unborn here in the state.
I see, and it seems to make a lot of sense in a strongly pro-life state like Missouri. How do you respond, though, to critics who say this bill is extreme and unconstitutional, that if this enforcement mechanism could be applied to other issues, it would become dangerous?
Well, so those are the same things that were lobbied against what happened in Texas with their enforcement mechanism. People who said we shouldn't have private enforcement, but in fact that hasn't happened. Texas has not turned into the Wild West, maybe any more than it already has. People follow the laws of the state. And so what will happen in Missouri if my provision becomes law is the same thing that happened in Texas, which is the providers will follow the laws, which will result in protecting and saving the lives of the unborn. I just would also like to point out that every single pro-life protection that has been put into law since Roe v. Wade was passed has been argued that it was unconstitutional or illegal. And we're standing right at the doorway of having that horrible decision overturned and having the decision of whether a state has abortion rights or is pro-life returned to the states. And so I think it's a little bit of a false argument, and it just isn't very convincing to me.
And I want to get your thoughts on another piece of Missouri news. Planned Parenthood is currently suing Missouri's Department of Social Services because they are limiting Medicaid funds for abortion businesses. Now, Planned Parenthood is claiming this is illegal, but could you explain what's going on here?
Yeah, so what's happened is Missouri has, every year that I've served, voted to defund Planned Parenthood, and the courts have repeatedly overturned that when Planned Parenthood has sued. But there is, every time they've overturned it, they've given us more guidance of ways to draft that language in a way that would be upheld. And we've taken yet one more attempt to try to make sure taxpayer dollars, just like at the federal government, are protected from funding abortion, that Missouri's taxpayer dollars are protected from paying for abortion. And I think that this language that we're using in this latest attempt has been used in other states, and I feel really hopeful that this is going to be able to be enforced. So again, a lot of the things that are often said about what's happening in pro-life states and the work that we're doing to save the unborn is intentionally distorted.
Yes. Well, State Representative Mary Elizabeth Coleman, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too. Governor Jim Justice of West Virginia just signed a new law that stops discriminatory abortions based solely on a diagnosis of Down syndrome. Currently, more than 2/3 of people diagnosed with Down syndrome in the United States are aborted. This new law in West Virginia stops discriminatory abortions based solely on a disability. The law also requires healthcare professionals to assist parents of children diagnosed with a disability in utero by providing them with educational resources. Joining me now to discuss is West Virginia Delegate Kayla Kessinger. She serves as the Assistant Majority Leader in the House of Delegates and is the sponsor of the new Down syndrome law. Kayla, thanks for joining us. I know that you've always prioritized life throughout your time in office. Tell us why and share with us the inspiration for this particular law.
Sure. So when I first got involved in politics at 13 years old, it was actually in the pro-life movement. The Lord really just gave me a burden for the unborn and their mothers. And I started to just get involved sort of as a political activist as a teenager with my petitions, trying to make sure that West Virginia protected life. Because prior to 2015, actually in West Virginia, there were very few regulations and restrictions on abortion. In fact, you could have an abortion all the way up until the moment of birth in West Virginia until 2015. And so when I ran for the House of Delegates in 2014, my first legislative session, one of the first votes that we cast was actually the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, banning abortions at 20 weeks. And that to me was just one of those moments where I was like, this is why I ran. This is what I'm here for. And subsequently, after passing that significant piece of legislation, we passed, the state voted for Amendment 1 in 2018, prohibiting taxpayer-funded abortions, which was another huge win for us in the life movement. And then this year, we were able to pass the Unborn Child with Down Syndrome Protection and Education Act. And so this is an issue that's incredibly important to me, incredibly important to the people of West Virginia, because in West Virginia, our state motto is that Mountaineers are always free. And you can't truly be free unless you are free to have your right to life. And so it's something that we are very, very proud of in West Virginia. We've been able to accomplish so much in this space.
Yes, your leadership is so inspiring. And in addition to serving as a delegate, you've taken on a new role with Her Plan. Can you tell us about your path to be a part of that project?
Absolutely. So last October, I was able to apply for a job with Susan B. Anthony List and this initiative that they've implemented called Her Plan. They actually chose West Virginia as one of the first 4 states to implement this program in. And as a Mountaineer, as a West Virginia girl, that to me was just so incredibly important, because most national organizations, to them, West Virginia is nothing more than a footnote. And yet Susan B. Anthony List, Marjorie Dannenfelser, and the leadership at SBA List saw that West Virginia was a leader when it came to protecting the life of unborn children and their mothers, and chose to sort of start this initiative for Her Plan in West Virginia as one of their first 4 states. And I'm just so excited that I get to play a small part in this.
And I've heard that you are not seeking re-election to the House of Delegates this year. What brought you to that decision?
So this was probably the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life, probably even more difficult than running for the first time 8 years ago. It was really a year of prayer and just seeking the Lord and asking for guidance. And really just over the last few months, I really felt like the Lord was showing me that this season of my life is coming to a close. I believe that the seats we hold are not meant to be held by the same person forever. As conservatives, we talk about term limits and things like that. And I think it's time to sort of pass the baton. And what's so beautiful is that this passion that the Lord has given me for moms and babies, the way that I've been fighting for them is going to change, but I still get to continue to fight for them. Working with Her Plan to implement a pregnant and life assistance network in West Virginia, so that every woman has the resources she needs to empower her to choose life. We don't believe that any woman backs into a corner, that abortion is her only option, but that we as a society, as a life-affirming community, should come behind her and support her and empower her to choose life for herself and for her baby.
That's beautiful. Thank you for being a leader in West Virginia, Assistant Majority Leader Kayla Kessinger.
Thank you, Prudence.